That's the shot. We really needed that power slide.
Let's see your Firefly can help. Alright, slide it. Boom.
Welcome to the next generation of website creation, Wix Harmony. Get the power of AI and the freedom of drag and drop.
A new top 15 was just rated and nobody is talking about it. If you don't know the underrated player Clune, he has beaten levels like Firework and Convulsion, but around a month ago, he verified what is likely to be his hardest completion yet. On April 22nd, 2026, he verified the 4-minute long extreme demon called Kill Stealer after over 35,000 attempts. Even though he beat the level over a month ago now, it only got rated recently on May 19th, 2026, meaning that we might see it placed on the demon list in the next month or so. A new top 15 was just rated and nobody is talking about.
Plane-carrying exposed hantavirus passengers finally landed after being refused entry for nearly 12 hours. At first, everyone on board thought the nightmare was over because after landing, medical teams boarded the aircraft and calmly instructed passengers to prepare for screening. And armed security teams surrounded the aircraft the moment it touched the runway. But something strange started happening almost immediately. Passengers were quietly separated into different groups without explanation. Some were escorted toward normal airport buses. Others were taken away by armed security teams wearing hazmat suits. And that's when panic spread through the terminal because families were split apart without warning, and airport workers were suddenly ordered to hand over their phones before entering certain areas. But what terrified passengers most was noticing that officials seemed far more interested in where people had been sitting on the plane than whether they looked sick. But late that night, several families waiting outside the quarantine center reported receiving disturbing phone calls from relatives inside. The plane-carrying exposed hantavirus passengers. A kind doctor once treated a poor boy's mother who was suffering from cancer. The boy couldn't afford the medical fees, but the doctor didn't care about money. He waived all the charges and continued treating her with full dedication until her last breath. Even though the boy lost his mother, he never forgot the doctor's kindness. Years later, during World War II, when Jewish people were being hunted and killed by the Nazis across Europe, something very surprising happened. This same doctor, who was Jewish, remained completely safe. German soldiers didn't arrest him or harm him. Instead, they treated him with respect, allowed him to keep his belongings, and even helped him leave Europe safely for the United States. The reason behind this shocking protection was revealed later. That poor boy, whose mother the doctor had once saved, had grown up to become Adolf Hitler, the most feared Nazi leader. A kind doctor once treated a poor boy's mother who was suffering from cancer. The boy couldn't afford
The Geometry Dash community has been going crazy recently, so here is most of what happened in only the last week. First, Extra 8 Nuggies got 48 to 95 on Angelicide, which was not only the longest run on it, but the run itself is considered to be harder than Andromeda. On roughly the same day, the two players Ooze 1 and an Ordinary Person both beat Solar Flare as their first Extreme Demons. Only a couple of days later, the top 15 Kill Stealer and the top 30 Maniacal Chains were both rated, meaning that they will likely get placed on the demon list in the next month or so, kicking out Cold Sweat from the list entirely. More recently, Nuggies got another crazy run on Angelicide with 37 to 82%, and just today, Dorami finally beat Limbo as his new hardest before joining the military. The Geometry Dash community has been going crazy recently, so here
plane-carrying exposed hantavirus passengers was suddenly denied permission to land anywhere. But at first, nobody on board understood what was happening, because the flight was only supposed to make an emergency landing after a passenger began showing hantavirus symptoms mid-flight. But instead of descending toward the airport, the plane suddenly turned back over the ocean. That's when passengers noticed flight attendants whispering to each other and locking sections of the cabin. Minutes later, the captain finally spoke. He explained that multiple countries had refused permission for the aircraft to land after learning several passengers may have been exposed to hantavirus before boarding. And because nobody knew who was infected yet, the entire flight flight was now considered a biohazard risk. That's when panic erupted across the cabin. Passengers started demanding answers. Some tried forcing their way toward the cockpit, but the situation became even worse hours later because the aircraft was starting to run low on fuel, and air traffic controllers still couldn't find a country willing to let the plane land. Then suddenly, the cabin lights shut off. A plane carrying exposed hantavirus passengers was suddenly denied permission.
These are the easiest extreme demons in Geometry Dash. I'm not gonna yap a lot at the intro, let's just get straight into the video. At number 3, we have Sweater Weather. I swear, after Doggy played this level because of the one donation message, a lot of people freaked out of how easy it is. People are beating this level in under 30 minutes. Like, how is that even possible? Okay, let me recap the gameplay. When I tried this level, I could see why people called it one of the easiest extremes. In the first part, you just need to learn the orb timing sequences, and if you are a ship carried, this level should be fine for you. The only hard part in this level, in my opinion, is the spider transition section, which is kinda difficult to buffer, but overall, I'd rate the difficulty of this level a 7 out of 10. Coming in the second place, we have Aki. How many times do I have to drag this level into my list again? But seriously though, this extreme is really easy. Once you learn the click patterns and the drop part, the rest you actually just need to follow the song patterns, and that's it. The only hard part in this level is the first part. Dude, like, I'm not even kidding. It's actually difficult because of the timings. For the difficulty, I'd give it a solid 7 out of 10. And finally, at last place, we have Cataclysm. A lot of you probably already expected this one. The only hard part in this level are the first mini wave and the Toggle Club Step Monster section, which is pretty tight to get through. These are the easiest extreme demons in Geometry Dash.
Imagine retreating from an entire town because you thought an army had surrounded you, only to discover it was just one man causing chaos all night. During World War II, a Canadian soldier lost an eye after a grenade explosion. Most soldiers would have been removed from combat, but he refused to leave the war. One night, he captured 2 German soldiers during a patrol. Instead of turning back, he forced them to lead him straight to their command post. Upon arrival, he acted as if a massive Canadian force had surrounded the area. The bluff worked. Nearly 100 German soldiers surrendered and marched the prisoners back himself. But his craziest mission came in 1945. Sent to scout a German-occupied Dutch town, Leo attacked alone at night, firing weapons and throwing grenades across different streets to make it sound like a full invasion had begun. By morning, the Germans had fled, and one man had liberated an entire town. Imagine retreating from an entire town because you thought an army had surrounded you, only to discover it was just one man causing chaos all night.
Here are 3 horror games that I cannot bring myself to play ever again. I've done similar videos in the past, you guys are always interested in the most disturbing stuff, and remember, all of these games are on here for different reasons. At number 3, we have Pumpkin Eater. A young boy passes away due to a freak accident in the front yard. The mother goes into shock, and instead of processing her grief, she puts a jack-o'-lantern on the corpse's head and pretends it's still her son. This is a medically accurate horror game where we experience the real-time decay of this child's dead body. The way the visual novel describes the decomposition process is revolting, and it stuck with me weeks after I was done playing. At number 2, we have Bad Faith. This is a horror game about a weight loss clinic and religious trauma. Basically, a young boy is being forced by his mother to undergo this special weight loss clinic treatment. The mother hates the way her son looks and in the process turns to God for additional help. However, it's when the treatment starts working that the game gets really disturbing. As somebody who has struggled with body dysmorphia before, this one especially hit home for me. Maybe some of you might have found it not as dark or disturbing as I did, but fear is subjective. Quick reminder that all 3 of these games have full playthroughs on my channel, but at number 1 we have Land of Ghosts. This is without question the most depressing horror game I have ever played. It's not necessarily scary, but it's absolutely gut-wrenching. It's a psychological RPG Maker horror game all about a very strange place. A place filled with people who have taken their lives. The game has a very beautiful ending, but the sadness you have to experience to get there is absolutely too much for me to do again. Here are 3 horror games that I cannot bring my
Why did everyone suddenly become good at Wave? Back then, Wave used to look completely impossible. Now players casually spam through Wave sections that would have broken the entire community years ago. And the reason? Well, it's because Wave is the most logical game mode in Geometry Dash. Unlike Ship, UFO, or Swing, Wave has almost no momentum or weird physics. You click to go up. You release to go down. That's it. Which means once players mastered basic click control, the skill ceiling exploded. On top of that, higher refresh rates and FPS made precise wave timings way more consistent than they used to be. And because Wave is so simple mechanically, creators started pushing it harder and harder until modern players adapted. So people didn't suddenly become superhuman. The community just slowly optimized the easiest game mode to make it insanely hard. Why did everyone
Your favorite streamer just told you she loves you. She says it to the camera every stream. But tonight, you're certain she means you. You started donating small amounts. She read your name on stream and smiled. You feel your heart pounding. The next week, you see it everywhere. She wore your favorite color. Then she hung a poster from your favorite anime. Then she said your name again, in a video, even though you weren't watching live. You think she's been watching you too, and decide to tell your friends? They look at you like you're crazy. One day while watching her old streams, you see her street sign. You drive 9 hours and run to her house when you get there. You knock on the door. She opens it and you try to hug her. Her face goes white, and she backs into the doorway. Her boyfriend steps in front of her asking who you are. She tells him she's never seen you before, and for a second, you don't understand. Then you realize it's a test. She's pretending in front of him. So you stand at the door for hours, watching the curtains. When the police come, you don't resist. You already know she's just waiting for them to leave. This is erotomania, where the brain becomes convinced that a stranger is secretly in love with you and sending coded messages. And somewhere right now, in a streamer's chat, someone is already on the way. Your favorite streamer just told you she loves.
Did you know the infamous wave part in Grief used to look completely different? It was originally made by Burger.17. Let me know in the comments if you prefer the new or old version. Also, help me reach 100k by the end of the year. Check it out. Did you know the infamous wave part in Grief used to look completely
A woman spent 30 years writing letters to her imprisoned son. Every week, without fail, she sent him words of love, encouragement, and money she could barely afford. He never wrote back, not once. On the day of his release, she stood outside the prison gates with tears in her eyes and open arms. He walked past her. He didn't even stop. A guard who witnessed it ran after the man. "Hey, that woman has been writing to you every week for 30 years. Don't you have anything to say to her?" The man paused. Then he turned around slowly and said, "I know. I read every single letter." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick, worn envelope. "I wrote back every time, too, but I never sent them because I was too proud." He walked back to his mother, placed the envelope in her trembling hands, and said, 30 years of replies. I was just too stubborn to give them to you while I had the chance." She opened the first letter. It began, "Dear Mom, I'm sorry." She wept. He wept. And right there on the pavement outside a prison, two people who had lost decades found each other in a single moment. Never wait until it's almost too late to say what you feel. Pride is a prison with no release date. A woman spent 30 years writing letters to her imprisoned Your son is asking you a question, thinking you're ignoring him, but your mouth won't open and you can't write down the answer because something happened 6 months ago that completely changed your life. First, you noticed your fingers were stiff. You worked long hours, so you blamed your job. Then 3 months ago, you started tripping. You blamed your shoes. Then your words started slurring and you fell down trying to put on your shirt. Then you couldn't walk up your own stairs. Eventually, your family helped you to the doctor and he told you the devastating news. The motor neurons that carry signals from your brain to your muscles are slowly dying. Your mind stays intact, but your body slowly becomes becomes your prison. There is no cure, and it only gets worse. Your wife feeds you now, and every day your son sits at the foot of your bed, telling you what happened in school. What's worse is that you can hear every word, but you can't tell him you're listening. He thinks you've lost it, but still comes every day hoping it will get better. But it won't. This is ALS. Doctors still don't know what causes most cases, and by the time anyone figures it out, you will no longer be there to hear the answer. Your son is asking you a question, thinking you're ignoring him, but you're You might have never seen the real version of most people, because the second humans feel watched, they stop acting like themselves. There's a real psychological effect where people instantly change their behavior the moment they feel observed. A person walking normally suddenly fixes their posture. Someone alone in an elevator immediately pretends to check their phone the second another person enters. People become quieter, slower, and more careful without even realizing it. But the creepiest part is that it even happens when nobody is actually there. In a real experiment, researchers placed fake eyes above an honesty box, and people suddenly became far more honest, even though nobody was watching them at all. Your brain is so terrified of being judged that even the illusion of observation changes how you act, and once you notice it, you start seeing it everywhere. The way people instantly change when a camera points at them. The way entire crowds suddenly act normal the second attention is on them. So the real question is, if people change this easily when they think they're being watched, then how often are you seeing the real version of someone? You might have never seen the real version of most.
The minus wave is the hardest gameplay type, and today I'm going to be going a bit more in-depth on how to make them. Currently I have this entire section of wave gameplay made, and the most crucial detail to pay attention to is that the top path and the bottom path are not the same. In my original tutorial, I glossed over two-player mode quite a bit. If you want to make harder levels, then duels are a really good way to do it. I personally don't use mini-wave all that much, so the rest of this tutorial is going to be for the bigger wave. The first thing I'm going to talk about are gaps. This gap right here, despite looking incredibly difficult, is not all that difficult for an impossible level. As you can see right here, there's a relatively large gap between the wave hitbox and the side hitbox. There are two ways to make this gap tighter. The first one is using something that I like to call macro walls for no reason in particular. This is basically just moving the slopes in. To my knowledge, the tightest variation of this is half a block in and one small step out. That is a 2-frame gap on 1440 FPS. The second way, which is the way that I usually use, is spike walls. Now this gap is a bit tighter than the normal slopes. However, this really gets more difficult when you put more spikes in the spikes. In the original generic impossible level, these weren't spaced in quite as much. However, if I space these in one full small space in both directions, and then push them a mini step out in both directions, and this is a 1, 2, 3-frame gap on 1440. Now, although this gap is tighter than this gap, I still usually use this one. Although, now that I'm messing around with these, I might switch to using these ones. Now, continuing additions to the normal wave corridor, there are